Good morning. We're a little tape delayed this morning. I apologize. I'm Mayor Chris Jensen coming to you live from Noblesville for another edition of Mental Health Monday. And I have some amazing guests with me, and it's my fault that we're delayed. So I apologize to all those who are anxiously awaiting for another edition of Mental Health Monday. Again, I'm Chris Jensen, Mayor of the City of Noblesville. I am joined by Kristen Boyce, the owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling here in Noblesville. Good morning, Kristen.
Good morning, Mayor Jensen. I'm excited for our discussion today and to have Roxy Stone with us.
Welcome, Roxy Stone. I was just commenting how amazing of a name Roxy Stone is, and she sounds like even more amazing of a person. So, Kristen, do you want to tell us a little bit about Roxy Stone?
Yes, I am delighted that Roxy is joining us today. Roxy has been a licensed clinical social worker for over 30 years. Is that right, Rox?
That's right.
Yes, for over 30 years. 15 of those years were at St. Vincent's Stress Center. And currently she's at Pathways working on trauma with individuals and anxiety and depression, and works a lot on suicide prevention and working with families and systems. So we are so excited to have Roxy join us today and all her wisdom and resources and years of experience. So welcome, Roxy.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm excited to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you. And, next month, Kristen, is Suicide Prevention Month across the United States. And so we're going to tackle that heavy topic today. And I know that is maybe a very triggering topic for people. And so we want to be upfront about that and know that, yes, this is a heavy topic. Yes, it's a very important topic. And we've said from day one, Kristen, when we launched this 4.5 years ago, that we were going to tackle heavy and difficult topics. And certainly suicide prevention is one that we need to address. And I think there's probably not a family around that hasn't been touched by this in some way or another. So do you want to kind of preface, before we get even into square breathing, kind of lay the groundwork for what we're going to talk about?
Yes, we're going to be talking about 4 core things. Why do people want to end their lives? And this is a very hard subject to talk about. I really encourage you to stay tuned in. If this is too much, we understand that. And we want to really break down the warning signs. What do we look for? What do we see? Like, what are we seeing? What do we need to watch for? And the next thing is, what can we do? How do we have a conversation with somebody? We all have so many fears about bringing it up, so we don't. We're afraid we're going to trigger the person, and that's actually a myth. The biggest myth, I think, about suicide prevention is actually bringing it to the surface and asking directly. And we're going to be talking about that. So we're going to equip you on how to have a conversation, what to say, what not to say, and resources at the end.
That's awesome. Well, good. And like I said, I know that is a difficult topic for so many, but if you have any questions before we get started here, or any thoughts or anything you want to share, feel free to use the chat. Let us know what is on your mind. We want to try to answer them for you if we can't answer them. And on the live stream, we'll get back to you with some answers later on. But before we do any of this or tackle any of this topic, we want to make sure we are centered and we are self-aware. And in order to do that, we need to do some square breathing. So, Kristen, I'll let you lead us through that conversation.
So at any point, you come back to your breath during this conversation if you need to, or throughout your day. If you feel this twinge of anxiety in your body, you feel maybe some heaviness, shortness of breath, maybe you're feeling anxious in your stomach, your head hurts, please use this tool throughout your day to come back to center. So we're going to put our feet on the floor. So if you're standing, we're going to press into our feet. If we're sitting, we're really wanting to ground our body and our nervous system. We're going to inhale through our nose for 4. We're going to hold for 4, and we're going to slowly exhale out our mouth for 8. You can do this anytime, anywhere. So we're going to do 2 breaths together, pressing our feet into the floor. Big deep inhale through your nose, through your belly, a big belly breath. We're holding, and then slow exhale. Let's do one more. Inhale through your nose. The hold's important. And then the release out your mouth. And you can do this anytime. I was doing this morning. I was like, I'm going to breathe. I'm breathing because we had a transition getting my oldest off to college. And there's a lot of moving pieces and parts to that. So I was doing my breathing this morning. So if anybody needs to take that words of encouragement to nurture yourself, please take 5 deep breaths an hour today to take care of you.
I think it's really important, Kristen, too. First of all, thanks for sharing, because I know your daughter did go off to college this weekend. And so I think it's important to hear that you are a human being as well as a wonderful therapist. You are practicing what you are preaching. And I think that's really, really important. I try to tell all the time when I'm stuck in traffic, which happens quite a bit these days because of construction. I do a lot of square breathing, even as mayor and as a parent. So it's very, very important. So with that, let's shift a little bit to the topic du jour, and one that is very, like I said, very, very important. Would welcome anyone to chime in with questions or thoughts as we go along. But Kristen, I'll let you and Roxy kind of take it from here around this deep conversation that we all need to be aware of.
Yes, I think the first thing we want to do is try to understand why someone would have suicidal thoughts or why they might think it's better just to not be here. And that's hard for people to comprehend and understand if they're not going through it. So, Roxy, what are some of the reasons? There's many, but what are some of the reasons someone might have suicidal ideation, which are thoughts of suicide, or want to take their own life?
Like you said, there are lots and lots and lots of reasons for that. Some people feel hopeless, like that nothing will ever change, and that can be almost anything. And it's important to remember, I think, that what may cause one person to feel hopeless may seem very simple to somebody else. And I think that's a huge one. Or people may feel trapped into whatever, it could be trapped in a relationship or trapped in with some kind of illness or something like that. Or it can be, not feeling connected to anyone, not feeling part of a group or anything like that, or just feeling like there's no more reason for me to live. I'm just a burden to other people. There can just be all kinds of reasons that people start to have thoughts of suicide.
And it's hard maybe to understand why someone would want to do that when you might not. The main thing when we're talking about this is try to open your heart and have a compassionate curiosity and really keep an open mind, because otherwise, if we judge somebody else or we're coming from it like, why would you want to do that? You're going to shut down the conversation and the person isn't going to feel safe.
Absolutely.
What are the warning signs if someone's like, let's say they have a teen or they have someone in their life that's kind of struggling? What are some of the warning signs for them to look out for?
Well, I think just some of the things that we've just talked about, those feelings, to notice what your child or what your friend or neighbor or somebody is feeling, and notice change. That can be a huge clue. And it's not always in the negative either, because if you have someone who has been depressed, who has been anxious, and all of a sudden they're really happy, sometimes that's a warning that they've made a decision. And it's important to kind of stay in touch with that. But certainly change is a big part of that, change in behavior, from being down and depressed to being suddenly a very angry kind of person. Noticing what's going on in their life. They have friends and all of a sudden they don't, or they changed friend groups, or something is happening at school. They may be withdrawing socially. They may be withdrawing from the family, withdrawing from their friend group. Somebody may suddenly decide it's time to make a will. They may give away something that's been important to them. I can recall a particular time that I had seen someone and commented on a pretty necklace. And then a couple weeks later, she brought it in. I was in session with somebody else, but brought in a little packaged present. And I opened it, and it was that necklace, which was a red flag, and started a whole series of events to get her the help that she needed. But those kinds of things are all signs of suicide. I think change is something definitely to recognize change in behavior, change in feeling, change in attitude. Doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's suicidal, but it's certainly worth the question.
Yes, and I think if someone's using substances
Yeah.
more, perhaps it's a substance use issue, and they have you see an uptick in drinking more, maybe they're smoking more, their behavior and their way they're showing up seems erratic or uncharacteristic, or an increase in usage. Those are definitely
Yeah.
signs.
Or
Also,
risk-taking behavior too. Somebody who's suddenly, driving really fast and, just taking all kinds of risks, and that kind of thing could be something like that too. So there are lots of things.
and secrets can often be a sign. Let's say a secret's discovered, something been hiding, maybe some pattern financially, or they've made some unhealthy decisions. And they feel shame, they feel guilt, they don't know how they're going to get out of the hole that they've dug. And so they think this is the only option.
Yes.
So we want to look for any hiding kind of things. And that's a little bit harder because someone can put a mask on and you might not be aware of it, but you can, if you see any kind of hint of a change, that's the key you're saying, is pay attention, notice. And now we're going to talk about how do you bring it up with someone if you are noticing some red flags or some concerns, or you just have a gut feeling and you're like, something's off.
Yeah.
I can't quite pinpoint it. They're isolating more. Maybe they're writing cryptic messages on social media. Maybe they're texting cryptic messages. Just, well, I'm just a burden. Nobody wants me here anymore. Pay attention to those. So what do people say? A lot of people don't know what to say, or they're afraid to bring it up because they're afraid they're going to trigger that person wanting to end their life. So let's talk through that.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up again. I know you mentioned it in the intro. That is incredibly important for everyone to hear, that talking about it does not plant the seed. And it is important to address it. And I think it's important to address it openly in terms of something like, do you have any plans to harm yourself? Now, that's not necessarily suicidal, but I might start with that. Or I might just say, are you having any thoughts of suicide?
Just as blunt as that.
As blunt as that, absolutely. As blunt as that.
And if they say something like, no, I'm not, what makes you say that? Then you can say, I love you and I care about you tremendously. And I see you and I'm paying attention. And what I've noticed is you're starting to give things away. You're posting things on social media. You're not quite, I can see a little shift in how you're feeling, more sad or more isolating. It's okay to say those things.
Yes, it is. It is. Another thing, I've had some people who just say no and kind of turn away. And, one of the things that I've asked them as well is, would you tell me if you were? And I've had some people say, no, I wouldn't tell you. And so then we go into the conversation in much greater depth. And some people say, yeah, I really would tell you. And, and here's the reasons why I would tell you, that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it's much better to be open and direct and talk about it. It helps alleviate the anxiety and some of the stress and just some of the pain that the other person is going through, because you obviously care and you're concerned and you're asking real questions that are important.
Let's say someone says, yeah, I've had thoughts of not being here. I've had thoughts of, would it be better off if I wasn't here? Then what do you say to somebody if they say, yes, I've had those thoughts?
I would ask more specifically about, can you tell me exactly what your thoughts are? And then I would ask, do you have a plan? And if so, what is that plan? Because a lot of times people do have plans, and it's important to know what that is. And sometimes, some people get very specific and tell you exactly. Most people will tell you. And then it kind of depends on what happens, where you go from there. But ultimately, you can refer somebody to a place where they do the assessments, and they have 24/7 service, that kind of thing, like the Stress Center or Community North. are the two in the area that offer 24/7 service.
That's what, one thing I'm just playing through my head is about if I was in a scenario like that and somebody, I guess I have two questions. One, if you're in a scenario where you're pretty sure something's going on with somebody and there's just denial, how do we, so park that in the parking lot for a second, because I want to come back to that and understand how to kind of dislodge that conversation and what tools you can use. And then I guess on the other part is, okay, I'm sitting with somebody, I asked them the question, they say yes. And they said, yes, here's my plan. And at this point, I'm like, probably internally freaking out a little bit, like, oh my gosh, that was not at all what I was expecting to hear. You laid it out for me. Where do I, what if someone's like, no, I mean, this is my plan. This is what I'm set on doing. And this is why. What do I do?
Okay. At that point, I think you try to get them to talk more and talk about the reasons that they might want to live. I've talked to people about the part of them that still cares, that still wants to live, that wants to take care of my dog, that wants to still be around my family, that try to connect on all of those positive things and try to connect to that part of them that still wants to live. And it kind of depends on where and how that goes. But ultimately, if you absolutely have to, in order to save someone's life, you can, contact the police at 911 and have them taken to a facility. That would be absolute last resort.
Mm-hmm.
And 988, if you're with somebody, and I want to just put this on a billboard, I feel like if we could just put this on all the billboards, on all the social media channels, 988, if you are with somebody and you are lost and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect this. I don't know what to say. I'm scared that I'm going to say the wrong thing and I'm going to make it worse, because a lot of people are like, I don't want to say anything. I freeze. I'm frozen now because I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And you're going to, like, what I say is going to cause you to do something. And so people are so afraid of saying the wrong thing. It's okay. Take a deep breath. You're going to dial 988 because if you need support and you're like, I need help, I need support resources, that's okay. And you're going to say to the person, I love you and I care about you. And we want to get you the support. I want to be here to support you. I'm going to stay here. I'm going to call. We're going to get 988 on the phone. This is what they're there for. This is what they deal with 24/7. And you're going to say, I'm with my friend. This is the plan. Can you help walk us through next steps and how I can help my friend, my family member, my kid, my coworker, my neighbor, whoever that is. You have support resources. This is phenomenal. This was really not an option. We had the suicide hotline, which then turned into 988. It's the 911 for these types of things. You don't have to walk it alone. You can text, you can call 24/7. I've actually given this to every single client. And I've had clients, especially teens, that want to self-harm. They want to harm themselves in some way. They don't want to die, but they kind of want to take the pain away, take the edge off. I say, since I'm not wraparound services, if you're not at Community North and you're not at St. Vincent's, you can call 988. They have called 988. They have texted and have gotten phenomenal results. They have been super helpful. So if someone's like, you're with your teen, you're with your neighbor, you don't know what to do, they're self-harming, you can call 988. Mm-hmm. This is such a key piece. Takeaway for today is, if you don't know what to say, it's okay. You go into freeze, 988. Say, hey, I want to get some support on the line so I don't say the wrong thing, because I love you so much and I care about you. And I want some support for us to walk through what best next steps are.
Yeah, I think it's important to know too that you can call 988 beforehand. Like if you know you're going to have this talk and you've kind of forgotten maybe what we said and just want reassurance, 988 is for family members, is for anyone, not just someone who is suicidal.
Can you talk a little bit about, I want to make sure we cover too, families that have been through this, that there are folks that are on the other side of these decisions, regardless of how the decision was. If someone has experienced a loved one who has taken their life, can we talk a little bit about the processing of that? Because that I think I've seen families, how awful that must be to sit with that, the guilt, the shame, the regret, the questioning. And so would it be okay, Kristen, if we touched on that topic a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. Rox, do you want to speak to that for those families and people that are walking through this journey, this grief journey? What would you say to them?
I would strongly recommend that you talk to somebody, either as a family or individually, a couple, whatever that would be. The other thing is that there are groups, survivors of suicide, that are out there and available. The other thing that's coming up, since this is the month of suicide prevention, is that there is a suicide walk that will be in Indianapolis on September 7th. And that is September 7th is a Saturday, and it's in the afternoon. And at that walk, there are mental health professionals who will be there. There are also lots of family and friends. I've walked that many times. It's a very emotional, cathartic experience. They pass out beads to represent, the color represents your relationship to the person who suicided, or you can just be someone who wants to support this. People take chalk and write letters to their loved ones, or they bring letters to post where they list the loved ones. It's just a very emotional thing. And it's also a way to meet other people who have been through it, because it is a very, very, very difficult thing. It's hard. There's a lot of guilt and shame for the people who go through it. And I would strongly encourage anybody who has been through it to find connection so that you can talk about it. That's very important.
And I think if you're walking with the belief that it's my fault, I could have done something to prevent it, which is really what the family member often comes in with, I highly recommend these groups, because most people that have walked through this have that belief, have that thought. And secondly, I highly recommend EMDR, it's eye movement desensitization reprocessing. I can't get this out there enough. It's a trauma modality to work through getting unfrozen from that feeling of I should have done something, I should have said something, I should have seen this, I could have done something. The regret, the shame, the guilt, that kind of gets frozen in time. It helps clear through that, so that isn't the go-to feeling you have. And the feelings of, anger and sadness and the gut punch you feel, is important that you have an empathic witness to help nurture and soothe that belief and those feelings, because without that, it's hard to move forward. It honestly is, because it's so impactful. So that's why these walks, the groups, there's lots of advocacy programs out there that I often plug people into, if they've had a death by suicide, someone close to them. And I honestly believe, if we talked and did a survey, I've been impacted by it. I know many people have on my team have been impacted it, and our clients and in the community. So if we could talk about it more, I feel like that is helpful prevention. And it's hard to talk about. Yeah. It's a hard thing to talk about because we're so afraid of saying the wrong thing, and we're afraid of stirring up our own pain.
Yeah, that's true.
I was just gonna, as we wrap up here, I was going to ask you kind of a clinical question, Kristen and Roxy. Kind of, what are you seeing as boots on the ground in this space right now? What kind of trends are you seeing around this topic? Again, I just rely on you. I think there are probably people that tune in to about that and what you're seeing in the clinic. What kind of trends are you seeing? Are you seeing upticks in this? Are you seeing downticks in this? What are you seeing?
Roxy, you want to speak to that?
I overall, and this is from what I read, from what I see more seniors kind of talking about, thinking about that. Also, I'm seeing some kind of middle-aged men who are kind of in crisis about what's the meaning of my life and that kind of thing. What I read is that there's a general uptick in overall, even kids, and certainly that it's increasing overall. I don't know, how about you, Kristen?
Yeah, I would say I'm seeing an uptick in the same, and teens in particular are really, really, it's because we're posting about it online. And if you have a child, please talk about this. Please,
Yes.
please. We know talking about this is prevention. And we weren't trained to talk about this in our families. Like nobody's telling us how to do this as parents. And so we're like, ooh, I don't want to say anything or plan. We want to talk about how to handle pain, how to handle if you feel like you're a burden, how to handle if you feel like, you've done something you want to hide and you regret that, or you feel shame about something. We want to bring those things to the light and start talking about it now as prevention. And if you see something, ask with love and tenderness. So what I wouldn't do is go, well, why do you feel that way? See, my tone changed. It has to be soften your tone, soften your facial expressions, open your body language up, and open compassion and tenderness. If you feel like you can't do it, then hire somebody or go to these free nonprofits that do help in this, or call 988. You don't have to walk it alone.
Yeah. Well, thanks for answering that question, because I do think that, the academic side wanted to, I was curious as to kind of what you are seeing. We hear about it, we read about it, but you guys are the absolute front lines in this space. So I think it's helpful, especially that senior component. I know, Kristen, you and I have talked about multiple times post-COVID, how the senior community has totally shifted. And even during COVID, that was a huge burden on them. So thank you both. Kristen Boyce, you're amazing. Roxy Stone, thank you for the work that you do. I'm so thankful that people are in the trenches, really helping foster these great conversations. So, Kristen, you've hit it on the head. If people are having any concerns, reach out to us, but reach out to 988 is where you need to go. Use it all the time. So, thank you guys so much for joining on another edition of Mental Health Monday. Please be aware of this topic in the month of September. Know that 988 is there and other resources are out there. And there's that walk on September 7th that we can post about as well. So in the meantime, thank you guys both again for taking time to be here.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Roxy. Thank you, Mayor Jensen.
Thank you for the opportunity.